Welcome to this video. So in this lesson, we're going to be building a simple BMI calculator with Python. I'd encourage you to try and build it on your own. You can just pause the video, build it on your own, then you can come back to refer back to the solution that you're going to come up with. So we all understand what a BMI calculator is. So basically, BMI stands for body mass index, and it is the number of basically, or rather, it's a number that is calculated using a person's weight and height to help determine if that person is underweight, normal, if they are overweight, or also if they are obese. So, to be able to do this, you of course need to understand that formula first. But before you dive into looking at the BMI calculator, in the last lesson we talked about functions, and there's this task that I gave on how you can do these functions basically. So if you've already done the task, I'd like you to use that whatever solutions you came up with, and I'd like you to compare them with what you're going to write right now. So I've created this file. It's called functions.tasks.py, and in this we're going to try and write this, right? So let's start with the first task first. So the first task says write a function that adds up three numbers. So again, from everything we've learned up to this point, this is how you define a function. And I can call this function maybe addition, and it takes in three numbers. So you can give it three parameters, A, B, and C. Or you can also use different words there. Then we can just print the sum of this. So A plus B plus C. Again, add some spacing here just for readability purposes. Then you can also add some sort of you can also add some basically formatting with an f string to do this. But the other thing you can do is you can return this just to practice what we talked about, the return keyword. You can just return instead of printing the output directly. Then you will go ahead and just call the function. So let's call the function first. So we're just going to say maybe result is going to be, we call the function addition, and you pass in the three parameters like that, and then you can just print the result. So one other thing that you can do is you can get these inputs from a user. So you can use the input function to get this input from a user. And yeah, so again, I'll leave that to you to go and try it out and see whether you're able to do it from what you've done before. I'll run this file here, function task.py. You see, you get the sum here is 9. Right? So that is on the first function. The second function says task rather write a function that checks if a number is even. So to check if a number is even, again, we're going to write here, we're going to declare a function, initialize it, and it checks if a number is even, right? So we're going to give it a variable called number maybe, then rather a parameter that is not a variable. And to check if that number is even, we're going to just say if number modulus, we used the modulus operator previously, if number modulus 2 is equivalent to 0, that's a double equal sign, then we're going to print a statement here that says, like I'll just use an f string here. I'll just say the number, then we pass in number here, and we'll just say the number is even, like that. And then we can go ahead and call the function. So in this case, we can just maybe declare a variable called even number, and you can be getting an input from a user here. So you can basically tell a user to enter a number to check if even. Again, there's a better way to format the such a statement, but I'll leave it to you. So and then you can go ahead and call the function even. So we're going to call the function even, then we pass in the number. So in this case, we pass in even underscore number is the value. Once you've passed this in, we can print out the output. So you can try to do something like this. Just wrap everything in a print, and in this case, you see you get an error. This is something that I'd like you to just be careful about in case you're trying to do it before. What you need to do is you need to store this result somewhere. So again, I'll just create a variable here and call it even. Then okay, I'll just call it even underscore num. Again, there are better variables that you can use here. Then going to call the number. Actually, I'll call this variable if even. That sounds even better. So if underscore even. Then we're going to print if underscore even as the variable there. Now if we run our code, enter a number, we enter 34. It says here type error, not all arguments are converted during string formatting. Yeah, so this is again, remember the input function. The input function returns a string, so you need to convert this string into an integer. So we need to do type conversion here. So I'll just wrap everything in an int like that. So I'll clear this and we run again. You see, enter number 34 again. Now it says the number is even. Now the reason why we're getting none here is because I'm using two print statements, because there's already a print statement in here. So to avoid that, I can do something like this. So I can actually just call the function without storing the result anywhere. The reason for that is because you already have a print statement inside here. If you are returning this statement, then that would be the case. But if you run this again, number, let's say 23, then we don't get anything, because you can add an else block here. You can add a simple else block to print here, and we'll say something like number is odd, like that. Now let's clear this. We run again. We check a number like 89. It says number is odd. We run this again. A number like 56. It says the number 56 is even. So that is on there is the solution for the second task. The third task was write a function that checks in two strings and prints these two strings combined. So this is talking about string concatenation basically. So what you can do here is, again, we're going to define a function here. Then we call it maybe some string. Yeah, okay, I think that sounds better. Some string. And it says that it checks in two strings, right? So we're going to call, just call maybe str1 and str2, comma here, str2. These are going to be our parameters. And what you need is just to return the sum of these two, right? So what you can do in this case is you can do something like this. You can just say, you can use a print statement and use a simple f string. Then you'll pass in, you can pass in str1, then and also add a space and pass in str2. So you can do something like this, and that's going to be fine. Or you can just use the plus sign for concatenation. Anyway, so let's call the function here. It's sum underscore string. Then we pass in two strings. So let's say the first string is hello, and the second argument here is going to be a statement like world. And then so I'll add a comma after hello here, like that. Hello. Okay, we don't need to add a space basically. Actually, this comma, you can even add the comma in here. So that comma. Now if we run this code, enter a number, this is for the previous 24, then you can see it prints hello world statement down here. Once it has done this, again, you can also use an input function to get the input from a user on the kind of the two strings that the user wants to print out. So that is going to be it on what was expected of these two tasks. Now let's dive into the purpose of this video, which is to build a simple BMI calculator with Python. So to do that, I've created another file here. It's called bmi.py. So again, just to reiterate on this, BMI stands for body mass index. So stands for body mass index. Body mass index, and this is what body mass index is. A number that is calculated by using a person's weight and a person's height to help to determine whether this person is underweight, normal, overweight, or if this person is obese. And the simple formula for calculating this, let's do that. The simple formula is to get the BMI. I'll just say BMI. To get that, you just need to take the weight of the person. I'll represent with W. Then you divide by the height of this person. So I can use H to signify that. That's simply how you calculate BMI. Now, to help us do this, we're going to define a function. We'll define a function, and we're going to call this function calculate underscore, let's say, BMI, and it's going to take in the two parameters that are needed. The two figures of values that we need to calculate this are weight. So I'll just write in weight, and you also need height, the height of a person. And then you can go ahead and return the BMI of this person. So to return the BMI, you'll just pass in weight. Rather, you'll do the calculation. So weight divided by the height. So the height is going to be height squared. So I should have just mentioned this here. So it should be a height squared like this. So again, we use those double asterisk signs to signify that. So we're going to divide by height, and then we use the asterisk signs too. So we're going to square the height. So weight divided by height squared. That simply calculates the BMI. But now we need to get these values, of course, the weight and the height. So we can use the input function, of course, to do this. So we're going to, again, define a variable here called weight, and we're going to initialize it to a value that we get from our user. And because weight cannot be an integer, or rather it can be an integer, but weight can be in decimal values. So we're going to use a floating point here. Then we use input function to get the input from our user. We'll tell the user, enter your weight, in kg. So they enter their weight in, should be a g here. Enter your weight in kg. Then we also need the height. Again, remember height is also qualifies as a floating point value. Then again, use the input function, and you tell this person, enter your height in meters. So with these two, we have the two things that we need to calculate the BMI. So to get the BMI, we're going to call the function calculate BMI. Should be calculate BMI. Then we're going to pass in the two arguments, weight and height, which are values that we're getting from our user. Then we can now print the BMI. Again, we can just format the statement in a nice way. So we can just say, again, use a simple F string and say something like, your BMI is, then okay, you can just do that. Then we pass in BMI, the BMI variable that we have out here. So this should be able to work. Okay, I'll just get rid of this. Again, auto completion is where that came there. But so we've already called the function, and let's try and first of all run this code to see if it works before we try and extend it further. So I'm going to do Python 3. This file is called bmi.py. So enter your weight in kgs. So let's say a weight let's say like 50. Then enter your height. So let's say this person is, let's say in meters, this person could be 1.6, let's say 1.50. Then you see it says your BMI is 22 point all that, right? So once you do this, now you know your BMI, right? We've already met the task requirements for this. But the other thing you can do to extend this further is to add some bonus logic to our BMI calculator. For example, to tell if a person is underweight, tell them if they are normal weight, overweight, or if they are obese. We can also do that. So to help us do that, we can go ahead and use if statements in this case, right? So what we're going to do is we can do that here. We can do them at this end here, the if statements. The other thing you can do is you can just embed everything inside the function if you wanted to. But let's go ahead and, okay, let's see what you can do here. So we get the BMI from here, and okay, let's just do everything here because the function returns with the value that we need. You can still embed everything inside the function, honestly, but let's just do it out here, just to try and I don't want to confuse you with a lot of logic here. So we're going to, let's say if the BMI is less than 18.5, then in this case we tell this person that they are underweight. So I'm going to print a statement and say you are underweight. Underweight, like that. Then we're going to have an elif, of course, because there are multiple conditions we need to take care of here. So if someone's BMI is 18.5, or in this case if it is less than or equal to 18.5 BMI, and also the BMI is less than 24.9. If this is the case, we're going to print a statement and tell this person that you are normal weight. You are normal weight, or you have normal weight. And the other thing that you need to do to check is for if a person is overweight. So we also have another elif for this. So in this case, it's going to be if BMI if the BMI is greater than or equal to 25, Okay, it should be BMI in here. I'm sure I'm confusing my own logic. And the BMI is less than 29.9. If this is the case, we're going to print a statement and we tell a person that, let's say you are overweight, like that. So else, if someone doesn't meet any of these requirements, yeah, that means the person is obese. So we're going to print a statement here. We're going to say print. Oh, I'm not sure why I'm doing that, honestly. Should be saying you are obese. I seem to be confused, but anyway. So this is what this does. Now, yeah, let's run this code again. So we run, and then we give the weight in kgs. So let's say 89. Then the height of this person, let's say 100, 1 point, let's say 1.69. Then we hit enter. It says 31. It says you are obese. Again, we're just using these values to calculate everything. In case you want to twist the values to fit the exact sort of like medical values, feel free to do that. But this is a simple BMI calculator that we've already built here. The key things to just take note of from what you've learned so far. We use the def keyword to define a function. Again, a function is a reusable block, so that's what we need to sort of take note of. Weight and height, these are parameters. Then the return statement is the one that sends the result back that we need. So like we mentioned in the previous video, we talked about the difference between a return and a print statement. We're also using the input function to get data from users, and we're using the float function here to convert the input that we're getting into a floating point value or into a number, because by default the input function returns a string. So there are other things you can do in this case. For example, you can go ahead and extend this further to maybe calculate, write a function that calculates maybe the calories, the calorie needs of a person, like loan repayments, currency conversions. You can brainstorm a lot of these ideas and try to build some simple project or functions to help you in achieving that. So we're going to go ahead and learn a lot more other concepts in the upcoming video. And at the end, we're going to also just build a lot more projects on this. If there's a part that was a bit confusing, let me know in the comments below. I'll try to clarify it for you. But also, if you're gaining some value from this video, I'd like you to subscribe and like the video, share, just making to help support achieve our mission from this. So thank you, and I'll see you on the next one.